Welcome in, everyone knows the Trojan Horse. Almost no one knows the trick that was cleverer and it was real. The Trojan Horse is a myth. Wooden horse, hidden soldiers, a city that opens its own gates. We tell it because it is neat, but it is a story. What happened off the coast of Spain on the 30th of April 1943 is not a story. It is documented in the declassified files of the National Archives in London. British intelligence took a dead man, dressed him as a Royal Marines officer, chained a briefcase of forged invasion plans to his body, let the sea carry him to the enemy. The Germans believed the papers. They moved real divisions to the wrong place. And the Allied invasion that followed landed against far lighter opposition than anyone had expected. The Trojan Horse tricked one city for one night. This trick moved the decisions of the German High Command for months. Here is exactly how it worked, step by step, with the facts checked. Over the next few minutes, I am going to walk you through the whole operation using named sources. The account by Ewan Montagu, who ran the naval side and later wrote The Man Who Never Was in 1953, the 2010 history Operation Mincemeat by Ben McIntyre. The records held by the Imperial War Museum and the National Archives and contemporary reporting from the BBC. We will cover the strategic problem the Allies faced, where the idea came from, how they found a body, how they built a fake man around it down to a single eyelash, how they delivered him, what the Germans did in response, and what it all cost, including the name of the man whose corpse made it possible stayed secret for more than 50 years. Start with the strategic problem, because the deception only makes sense against it. At the Casablanca Conference in January 1943, Churchill and Roosevelt agreed that the next move after North Africa would be Sicily, to knock Italy out of the war and open the Mediterranean. By the spring of 1943, the Allies were closing out the fighting in North Africa, and the next step was obvious. To get into Europe from the south, you needed Sicily, the island at the toe of Italy that controlled the central Mediterranean. It was obvious to the planners in London, and it was obvious to the Germans. Winston Churchill's own planners put it plainly. As recorded in Ben McIntyre's account, the assessment was that everyone but a bloody fool would know that it's Sicily. That was the trap. When the target is that predictable, the enemy fortifies it and waits. An invasion against a prepared defense is a slaughter, so the problem was not where to go. It was how to make the Germans look somewhere else while you went exactly where they expected. You could not hide the fact that a huge invasion fleet was gathering. You could only try to change the enemy's mind about its destination. The idea traced back to a document from 1939 called the Trout Memo. It circulated under the name of the Director of Naval Intelligence, Rear Admiral John Godfrey. Historians, including Ben McIntyre, note it carried the fingerprints of his assistant, a naval officer named Ian Fleming, the man who would later invent James Bond. The memo compared deceiving an enemy to fly fishing. Among its schemes was one blunt idea: plant misleading papers on a dead body and let the enemy find it. By 1943, that idea had a home. It was run through the 20 Committee, written as a double X, a visual pun on double cross. The body that ran captured and turned German agents in Britain. The plan itself was conceived by Flight Lieutenant Charles Comendelli, an RAF officer attached to MI5. Developed in detail by Lieutenant Commander Ewan Montagu of Naval Intelligence, a barrister in civilian life. Comendelli supplied the concept. Montagu built the man. Here is the part the films rarely dwell on because it is uncomfortable. To sell a dead officer to the enemy, you first need a real dead body and a real dead person. The body they used was that of Glyndwr Michael, a homeless Welshman who died in London. According to the National Archives records and Ben McIntyre's history, he died on the 28th of January 1943 after ingesting rat poison containing phosphorus. Whether he took it deliberately or ate discarded food laced with it was never established. He had no family pressing for him, and that, coldly, was part of why he was chosen. His body had to pass as a man who had died at sea, drowned or dead from exposure in the water after an aircraft went down. According to Ben McIntyre's account, the plan drew on advice from Sir Bernard Spilsbury, the era's most famous forensic pathologist, who judged that a Spanish doctor performing a hurried post-mortem was unlikely to distinguish phosphorus poisoning from death in the sea. The body was kept in cold storage while the identity was assembled. It could only be used for a limited time before decay would give the game away. That was the gamble the planners were making with a real man's remains. The neutrality of the sources here matters. This was a deception built on a corpse, and the people who ran it knew it. Now the craftsmanship. To make the Germans believe the documents, they had to believe the courier, so Montagu and Comandelli invented one in exhausting detail. The dead man became captain, acting Major William Martin of the Royal Marines. And they filled his pockets with a life what intelligence officers call pocket litter, per the Imperial War Museum and Ben Macintyre's account. That litter included a photograph of a fiancée called Pam in reality, a photo of an MI5 clerk Jean Leslie, and 2 love letters from her. There was a receipt for an engagement ring priced at £53, 10 shillings and 6 pence from a Bond Street jeweler. There was an angry letter from his bank demanding he clear an overdraft of £79, 19 shillings and 2 pence. There were theater ticket stubs, a club bill dated the 18th to the 24th of April, keys, cigarettes, a religious medallion. Every item was chosen to make a fake feel used, ordinary and human. The ticket stubs in particular fixed a date. They proved Major Martin was alive in London just days before he supposedly flew out. The body could not look like it had been in the water too long. And there was one detail that shows how careful they were. To check whether the Germans had secretly opened the sealed documents, Montagu placed a single eyelash inside the folded letters. If the letters came back and the eyelash was gone, they would know the enemy had read them and resealed them. That single hair is in the record, a hair used as a tripwire. The point of the whole exercise was the briefcase. Inside was a personal letter written to look informal from one senior British general to another, from Lieutenant General Archibald Nye to General Harold Alexander. As quoted from the operations files, it discussed the enemy reinforcing their defenses in Greece and Crete, and it named the real target Sicily as merely a cover target, a feint. A second letter contained a clumsy joke about sardines, planted in the hope the Germans would read it as a hint about Sardinia. So the false story pointed at 2 places, Greece in the east and Sardinia in the west. The truth, Sicily dead center, was dressed up as the decoy. Delivery fell to the Royal Navy submarine HMS Seraph, commanded by Lieutenant Bill Jewell. The body was sealed in a canister packed with dry ice and taken aboard in Scotland. The crew were told it held a secret meteorological device. On the morning of the 30th of April 1943, off the port of Huelva in southern Spain, the officers released the body into the sea at around 4:15 in the morning. Huelva was chosen deliberately. It had an active German intelligence presence and a local network the British knew would pass material to Berlin. A Spanish fisherman found the body that same morning. Now the deception had to travel on its own, through hands the British could not control. Spain was officially neutral, but its officials cooperated with German intelligence. The body was handed to the Spanish authorities over the following days. The sealed documents were quietly extracted, photographed. The copies passed to the Abwehr German military intelligence and sent up the chain toward Berlin. The letters came back to the British afterward, and their laboratories confirmed the papers had been opened and resealed. The enemy had read them. British codebreakers, reading intercepted German signals, could then watch the reaction spread. This is the crucial part. They could see the enemy move, and the enemy reacted exactly as hoped. According to Ben Macintyre's account and the records at the National Archives, by mid-May 1943, the German High Command had accepted the papers as genuine. On the 12th of May, an order went out that measures for Sardinia and the Peloponnese, that is Greece, were to take precedence over everything else. A panzer division was moved toward Greece. Sardinia's garrison was reinforced to roughly 10,000 troops. And the German buildup in the region grew markedly, according to figures cited in Ben Macintyre's account and the operational records. German divisions in Greece rose over the following weeks. The total in the Balkans climbed from around 8 to 18. Forces committed to defending against an invasion that was never coming. It is also widely reported that Field Marshal Erwin Rommel was sent to Greece in this period to oversee defenses there. An account repeated by Macintyre, though the exact timing is debated, and I flag it as reported rather than settled. When the confirmation came through, Montagu signaled Churchill, who was traveling, with 3 words that became the operation's epitaph: mincemeat swallowed whole. A parallel message told the Prime Minister the bait had been taken rod, line, and sinker by the right people. Then came the real thing. On the night of the 9th to the 10th of July 1943, the Allies launched Operation Husky, the invasion of Sicily. Per the Imperial War Museum, it was one of the largest amphibious operations of the entire Second World War, more than 3,000 ships. Around 150,000 troops put ashore in the first days, more than 4,000 aircraft overhead. By several measures, its opening assault was on a scale comparable to, by some accounts, larger than the Normandy landings that would come the following year, and the defenses were in the wrong posture. German attention and reinforcements had been drawn east toward Greece and the Balkans west toward Sardinia, away from the island that was actually being invaded. The figures reported in Ben McIntyre's history capture the difference. Planners had feared as many as 10,000 Allied casualties in the first week. The actual number was closer to 1,400. The campaign had been expected to take around 90 days. Sicily fell in 38. I present these as the figures given in that account, and note that casualty estimates vary between sources. No single trick wins a war, and the fighting on Sicily was still real and lethal. But the deception did what it was built to do. It moved the enemy's forces, and it lowered the cost of the landing. The wider effect followed quickly. With Sicily collapsing, Mussolini was removed from power on the 25th of July 1943. Italy signed an armistice with the Allies that September, switching sides in the war. The consequences of the deception did not stop at one beach. So come back to where we started. Why is this better than the Trojan Horse? Because it is real, it is documented, and it worked on the mind of the enemy rather than on a wall. The Trojan Horse, if it happened at all, tricked the defenders of one city on one night. Operation Mincemeat is preserved in the archives of a real government, its signals intercepted and read. Its effect measurable in the movement of named divisions across a continent, and notice what the weapon actually was: not a horse, not a bomb. A dead man, a briefcase, a love letter, a theater stub, and a single eyelash. The British did not break the German High Command's defenses. They fed it a story so complete that it moved its own armies to the wrong coast and then watched through intercepted signals as it did. But there is a human cost sitting underneath all of it, and a fact-based account has to name it. The officer buried with honors in Huelva, Spain, under the name Major William Martin, was not an officer at all. He was Glyndwr Michael, a homeless man who had died alone in London in January 1943, whose body was used without his knowledge or consent for a secret war. For decades, the truth stayed classified. Ewan Montagu wrote the story in 1953 as The Man Who Never Was, a book that sold around 2 million copies. Became a film in 1956, but he did not reveal whose body it had really been. It was not until 1997 that the Commonwealth War Graves Commission added a line to the headstone in Huelva, recording that Glyndwr Michael served as Major William Martin. The 2010 History by Ben McIntyre, a feature film released in 2021 and 2022, brought the full story to a wider audience. The man who fooled a dictator got his name back more than half a century late. So that is Operation Mincemeat, a deception run through the 20 committee built by Comendelli and Montagu, carried by the submarine HMS Seraph, swallowed whole by the German High Command in the spring of 1943. It is a reminder that the most effective weapons in that war were not always fired. Some were written, folded around an eyelash, and handed to the enemy to find. If you want more true stories told this way, checked against the archives with the sources named out loud, subscribe. I will keep making them.